So Julie, here we are talking about worship and what it all means. And I was with the REVERE group. It's such an honor to be a part of this group. But I was with the REVERE group several months ago, and we were talking about worship, and I was praying into what it means to participate in worship. And because we know worship's so much more than just a slow song. And as I was praying into it, the Holy Spirit gave me language. And what I sensed was that worship is wandering into the worthy. And I think it's so easy and so tempting for us to just want to systematize the worthy, to put the worthy in a box. But I believe that God is calling us back to the state of reverence that breaks the boxes and invites all of us, all of our lives, into the plans and the purposes of God in surprising and unexpected ways.
Yeah, it's an invitation into the mystery.
It is. It is. Not to just grasp something, but to be grasped by something.
Yeah, and we do tend to do that with things that we know are important. We want to create a formula so that we're certain we're doing it right.
Yeah, because it feels weighty. It feels important. So we want to know where to go and how to do it. And the idea of reverence and the fear of God is like we are lost in the one who has no end and no beginning.
Yeah.
Like that was Isaiah's moment, Isaiah 6. It's like, woe is me, I must be silent. I can't give words to the expression of the one who has no end and no beginning. Yet somehow there's this moment where a coal's taken from the presence of God and it's placed on his lips. And the man who says, woe is me, I must be silent. Woe is me, I'm undone. He's now saying, here I am, Lord, I will be your messenger. I will give words to your otherness, to your beauty, to your majesty, to your holiness.
Well, in my mind, that feels like a progression where you are in the midst of something that is awesome, that is beyond anything you can understand, and it strikes you. And all you want to do is just kind of absorb as much as you possibly can. And then there's the awareness that, oh, this isn't just for me.
Yeah.
If it ends with me, what good is it? Like I'm willing, even in my smallness, to take this where I'm meant to take it because of that awe. Being struck by the awesomeness of who God is.
Wow. Okay, I'm thinking about Revelation 5 right now. In the moment.
Same.
Come on, you're thinking, we're on the same.
For God so loved the world. Just kidding.
That moment when we see the throne room and we see the elders and we see the saints and the prayers and the expressions of God's will and his purposes, they're being poured out. And it's incense in the presence of God. And then we have the lion who becomes a lamb. And there's this proclamation of like, who is worthy? Who is worthy?
Yeah.
And then the defining attribute of the lamb's worthiness is the fact that he has reconciled the nations. Tribes, tongues, peoples, and lands are coming together under one banner of the worthiness of the holiness of God. And that's what makes him so other. He's the only one who could make us a people who are one in reverence. Like in that place of reverence, differences start to reconcile.
Yeah.
Because we move into a space of belonging and togetherness and purpose and mystery that is only understood in the largeness of who God is. And I love what Paul writes in Ephesians 3 after he's described the mystery of the gospel, which has so much to do with the Gentile, with the outsider belonging and being part of God's family.
Well, and even to your point about the lamb being the one who is worthy because he was the one who opened it up.
Yes.
It was no longer just the chosen people. This was beyond them.
And it was actually clarification of the vision that God had always communicated to them. Even going back to Genesis 12, when he told Abraham, I will bless all the families of the earth through your family.
Yeah.
Like this is the intent, this is the heart of God, is to actually invite all of us in through the mystery of his worthiness, his otherness, his holiness. And Paul says, for this reason, I bow my knee. He's like, I bow my knee to the Father by whom every family on heaven and on earth is named. He's like, this is a mystery that requires us to move into worship. And if you look at what the angels are saying, what they're responding to, holy, 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 the whole earth, the whole world is filled with your glory. Yeah. And if you look at the prophetic promises in Habakkuk 2:14 and Isaiah 11, I know I'm running through a lot of scriptures right now. you see that the knowledge of the glory of God will cover the earth like the waters cover the seas.
sea.
And I think for us, worship has become too singular, too momentary, when in truth, our lives are supposed to be a living sacrifice of worship. And practically what that means is going into every single day with reverence and expectation, because we know God is going to show up in some ways that requires us to fall on our face again and say, holy, holy, holy. I need fresh eyes to see you. Spirit of God, lift me up, just as you lifted Ezekiel up. Lift me up so I can see things as they truly are in the light of who you are.
Well, in this concept that worship is an invitation, so that we are going out into our sphere, whatever that may be for each and every single individual, and allowing the wide capacity of what worship is to then draw people in, to draw people near to the heart of God.
Yeah, it's not, as we were saying earlier, it's not just a slow song. It really is an orientation. It's something that we bring into every moment of our day. And I know for these songs, these Revere songs, and what we're doing here with Revere, this isn't about a single moment, it's about a movement. The moments are supposed to initiate and ignite movements that move into our everyday lives. The idea is that what is known as secular, what is known as the outside, that is going to be reclaimed for the beauty and the purposes of God. Going back to what I shared out of Habakkuk 2:14 and Isaiah 11:9. The knowledge of the glory of God will cover the earth like the waters cover the seas. That's what we're called to become. We're called to be temple people who bring that reality with us, revealing God's purpose and his intent and his design to all of creation in every expression. Like, that's what we were made for. And that's why we do find ourselves in this place of discontent with boring, predictable worship. Because worship isn't supposed to move us back to this place of smallness or back to this place of fixation on self. It's supposed to move us further into the beauty and the majesty and the purposes of God.
So how do we reconcile that, though? When we're in these moments, because like you said, it's not about the moments, it's about the movement, and yet the movement is made up of many moments.
It is.
So we're in these moments, and there's this awareness, this awe, this reverence for who God is and who God has called us to be. And then we go back out into our world, and we so easily slip back into the mold that we ourselves have been a part of creating, or those around us, our upbringing, you name it. There's a mold of who we believe we are. And God completely breaks that mold in those true reverential moments of worship. But so I want to know, reconciling the two of those.
Well, I think the first step is recognizing that every moment is sacred. Like, every moment belongs, every space. We're called to be the people who reclaim spaces through reverence. Like, that's actually how we reclaim those parts of our lives that seem trivial, that seem mundane. Like, even in the mundane, there's moments of glory. There are moments of opportunity. Like, for us, we have 4 small children. There's a lot of moments that don't feel like they're glorious moments. But when we take a step back and we see what God is doing in those moments through our participation in the formation of these kids, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And it's the heart of God. And I think there's so much in our lives, if we all take inventory, that we've just kind of set to the side and be like, God actually doesn't want to enter that space. And I think reverence is inviting God into that space and just seeing what God's going to do. And I think these songs encourage us to bring that spirit of expectation and that desire for reverence, to have a greater appreciation of who God is and what that means for us as sons and daughters into every area of our lives. And that's where we flourish. Like, that's where we become the people that we're called to be. And that's where our world starts to change into the vision and the promise that God has spoken over our world.
It's powerful.
It is. It's what we were made for. Like, we can't settle for anything less. Like, the holy discontentment that we feel, like, there's a lot of people.
Well, even where you started, talking about wandering. Like, I would say my lowest moments are like, I am just wandering through this life, trying to survive, trying to produce children who are, a benefit to the world and not a weight on the world or myself. And And yet, in that wandering, I am met by the Lord. I'm met by the Holy Spirit. I'm empowered, but I want more.
Yeah.
Like, I want a consistency.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
It is, and it's only possible through surrender. So like, as long as we're looking for consistency through control, it'll be terribly inconsistent.
You need to say that again.
I don't remember what exactly I said.
Consistency through control.
Yeah, so that's what we normally look for, is consistency through control, but we can find a consistency through surrender. This is what Jesus is getting at in Luke 9, and Paul's getting at in 1 Corinthians 15, where he's talking about dying daily. Like, every day we surrender our idea of God and life and ourselves and what it all means when it converges and comes together. And we're saying, give us eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart to perceive and understand. And even the cry, like you see on the back of the Jeeps, not all who wander are lost.
Yeah.
There's something so true about
I don't think Jeep came up with that.
Well, I'm saying you see it all over the place. And there's something profound in that. And I know we could say, like, there's a spirit behind that that maybe doesn't align. But I would actually argue that it is a cry that we have to wander into the beauty and the majesty and the mystery of God, where only the Spirit can be Lord, and only the Spirit can reveal to us what is most true about God and ourselves.
Well, and it's a bucking up against the system that says, if you are wandering, you must be lost because you're off trail.
Yeah.
You're not following the path that has been paved. And that, to me, is a picture of eternity written inside of each of us, where there's this, and it gets confused and manipulated and perverted, where it's like that thing inside of you that's looking for something off trail is wrong, or it's unredeemed. And certainly
there's an element of that.
Yes.
There's an underbelly of that. There's no question. But when we get lost in the person of God, just as Isaiah did, there is a prophetic response that is appropriate for the season that we're in. If you look at Jeremiah 23, I love this moment. There's a moment where God is talking in frustration. And he says, I didn't send the prophets, yet they ran. They went and they shared a message. And he said, but if they would have stood in my presence, if they would have been people who participated in the reality of who I am, if they would have been people who wrestled with me, which is a part of the identity of followers of Jesus and the people of God as we wrestle with the idea of God. If they would have done
break that hip.
If they would have done that, then God would have given them, he says, if they would have stood in my counsel, I would have given them the words that they needed to heal the land, and so that the land could turn back to God and discover once again what it is to be the people of God. And there's a world right now that needs a message from us that is only found when we stand in the presence of God, when we participate in the reality of Emmanuel, God with us. And that's not something that happens just when we do worship songs. It's something that we're invited to each and every moment of the day. That's what Paul's getting at in 1 Thessalonians 5, when he says, pray without ceasing, in Romans 12. Like, that's what he's getting at. And I think that is the greatest invitation that connects our hearts and our lives and relationships in ways that leads to the flourishing that we crave.